Hello Internet, this is Scott with Scott's Garage, and this evening I am privileged to work on my 2000 GMC Sierra 1500. This has the 4.8 Vortec engine. It is a 4x4. This truck, believe it or not, these are the original brakes. I have almost 240,000 miles on this vehicle, and these are the original brakes, everything. I mean, original shoes, original rotors, and it's time to finally change them. So that's the project for this video. As you can tell, I have the vehicle, it's on jack stands, some very sturdy jack stands. I'm working in my side yard. Normally I don't do this, so I'm on dirt here, but I do have a 3/4 inch plywood to firmly base the jack stands on. Make sure you jack it up correctly and use substantial jack stands. Safety always has to be number one. Okay, I'm just going to walk you through verbally, first of all, in how to replace the rotor, take the old rotor off, and to get to the brake shoes. Notice first of all that I turn the steering wheel to the right. That gives us easy access. There's 4 main bolts here. Without turning that wheel, it's really hard to break them loose, but by turning it and with a little bit of persuasion and extension bar, you can pop these. Now, what we're looking at here is a caliper bracket. So it's a bracket that goes around the caliper, and these are the T55 bolts, and basically there's grease in there, and it is meant to go back and forth, but you have to break them loose, and you want to break them loose now while everything's attached. You don't want to take off the caliper and then you have to mess with these bolts. So loosen them now. Don't take them all the way out, but loosen them. And then there are 2 other bolts. They're 18 millimeter, not as long as the torque, but right here. There's one here, and then one on the bottom side. And likewise, with the wheel turned this way, and I have a 1/2 inch socket deep well, and I also put an extension on there, and just break those loose, and that's the first step. Okay, so I have removed those 18 millimeter bolts, and I've loosened the caliper bracket. It's still attached, the torque bolts here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these off. They're just hand tight now, so I can just do it by hand, and then the whole thing will slide off as far as the caliper bracket and the shoes, and that's how we will remove the brake shoes. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to retract these. They're extended too far in, and we'll need a C-clamp to do this. And so what I'll do is take one of the old shoes, just put it in place. I'll put a C-clamp where my thumb and finger are at, and just tighten it, and it will push these boots and pistons right back in place, and then we'll have plenty of room for the new brake shoes. Alright, I am recording over the original audio on this part of the video. Here are the brake shoes, and please notice the brake wear indicators, the clips I'm pointing to. That one shoe has 2 and the other one only has 1. That's by design. If you look at the caliper bracket, and I'm sorry it's not clearly in the video, but just logically look at it, you can see that on one side of the bracket it's too close to a fit. That's why there's not a brake wear indicator on that side. So just make sure that you put the first pad in. I believe that's the one with the 2 indicators, and then the second pad, which you see now, fits in place, and you can just see by looking at it when you put it in that that's the way it has to go. What I'm demonstrating now is I'm taking the pads that are in the caliper bracket and attaching them back to the caliper, using the torque bolts as hand tight to begin with. Then I'll use a ratchet, tighten them a little bit more. The final tightening will take place at the very end. Then I basically leave that complete unit, that's all set and ready to go. Just carefully set it aside on the top there, top of the knuckle. You don't want it to drop down You don't want to in any way stress any of the brake hoses, but it'll safe to be in place. And the next thing we'll do is remove the old rotor. To remove the old rotor, you first have to remove these little clips. There's 2 of them. I just use a needle nose and just kept prying and prying them back, and eventually they'll come off. Be careful not to knock down that caliper bracket. I was getting pretty close there, but just keep removing those, and then the rotor will come right off. Obviously here I am putting on the new rotor, so I push it in place. I use those little clips simply to cinch it tight, and it just helps a little bit. Also, I had some grease on my hands. I took a rag with some brake cleaner and I cleaned the surface of the disc. That's very important. Make sure you keep the disc as clean as possible. Okay, what I'm doing here is lowering the caliper unit with the new brake shoes in place. Simply line them up to the bolt holes. I'm putting in the 18mm bolts, hand tightening them. I'm going to take a ratchet and tighten them, cinch them up a little bit more. And I'm also tightening the T-bolts, and just as tight as I can. I'm using a 3/8 ratchet there, and make sure the wheel spins. Next is the final tightening, and this is my torque wrench. I Googled it. I found several places that said 129 foot-pounds, so that's the setting that I use. Do your own research. But as you know, with these torque wrenches, this particular type, just torque it until it clicks. Make sure the wheel spins as well. All right, I am on the final wheel on this 2000 GMC. So this is the passenger rear, and overall the rears are easier. It's just a single piston on the caliper, and you don't have to take off the caliper bracket at all. You just have to take off the 2 18mm bolts. That was my one problem though. On the other side, one of the bolts was just seized on there. So what I use is this product. It's called Blaster, since 1957. Breaks loose faster, penetrating catalyst. It worked really well. I sprayed this on there, and you can see where it worked its way in, and it made it start making its way around the threads, and it loosened up pretty well after that. So I've already loosened this side, so I'm just going to take off the 2 bolts, to take the caliper and caliper bracket off as one. Okay, I'm just going to lift again the entire unit, caliper bracket and brake shoes all in one. There they are. Yeah, in looking at this, I found my squeaker. The brakes were beginning to squeak, and sure enough, it's this one shoe on the rear here. These are very thin. So what I'm going to do now is, I think I'm going to replace the rotor first. Real easy to do. Just pull this off, put the new one on. Then I will take out the old shoes and put the new shoes in. It's very straightforward. Rotor is really easy to put on. There are no clips on this back one. I do have some brake cleaner. I'm going to clean a little bit of grease on there. You don't want that. These rear shoes are very easy to get out. There's a spring. You just push down, and they come right out. Put the new ones in. Oh, we want to retract that piston to allow more room, and that's very simple. Just take an old brake shoe, put it over the piston, use a C-clamp. You can't see it, but I can. The piston retracts pretty easily. As you do so, you're basically pushing brake fluid back to the master cylinder. You might have some brake fluid even come out of the master cylinder. That's fine. It's just hydraulic pressure reverse, and you get the piston to go back in place. That allows more room. These old shoes are so thin that you're going to need space to get it over the rotor. Okay, that's sufficient. Okay, now we put the new brake shoes in. Real simple. Push them in the center. Get that spring to push down. Okay, that one's in. Second one. There we go. Nice and clean, lots of space, they fit well. Now we'll put the caliper and caliper bracket in place. This fits right over like that. And we line up the bolts. Okay, I'm going to torque them in place now, 129 foot-pounds. Okay, that's it. Make sure it spins. Okay, I have all 4 wheels on, the lug nuts all tightened up on all wheels, and the decorative caps are on. Just a couple more things. I'm going to show you something with the brake pad that you should check, and then we're going to take it for a quick test drive. Now, without the engine running, you want to put your foot and press the brake pedal. Now, you press it like normal, but then it reaches a point where you can't press it anymore. It should be nice and firm, and you want to hold this. And I suggest at least a minute, very firm pressure. There should be plenty of distance between the brake pedal and the floor. If you continue to feel the brake pedal go in, and get closer to the baseboard, you have problems. You want to make sure that, again, it's nice and firm and that the brake fluid is not leaking anywhere. Now this feels really good, and I've already tested this. I'm just showing you. And we're going to take it for a test drive. I'm going to begin with just some gentle braking and make sure it's not pulling one side or the other. That's even pressure on the brakes. And if that's okay, I will do a firm brake, hard brake. I'm not going to skid or anything. This has ABS brakes. But that'll be the test drive.
Good so far, gentle braking. That's great. So brake a little bit harder right here. Nice and firm. Firm again.
They feel like new brakes. Okay, I'm going to wrap up this video here. First of all, I am not a professional. I'm a backyard mechanic. This is not professional advice. But there are a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there, and if you are, please consider doing a brake job. Now, with this, I called Brake Masters. I got an estimate of what it would cost. New rotors, new brake shoes, flushing the system, exactly what I've done here. And they told me $670 plus tax. I spent $110 on everything, all 4 rotors, all the brake kit, the shoes, and about $10 on brake fluid. So I saved substantial money, and that's why I do these things. But this is Scott with Scott's Garage. If you like the video, please hit like. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means it's valuable to me. And please also consider subscribing. And if you do, hit the bell notification to be informed of upcoming videos. Have a great day.